Have you seen me dice bag? The Grognard Files.
Hello, my name is Dirk the Dice, and this is the Grognard Files podcast, where we talk bobbins about tabletop RPGs from back in the day and today. I'm coming live from my den here in the heart of the northwest of England. This is the second part of episode 63, which was all about Liminal RPG. It's not an extra, it's more like a neat, thin, hardback supplement, which is beautifully illustrated with a concealed packet of scampi fries, if you care to look. Yes, this time we're returning to the world of urban fantasy and folk horror, the distinctly British form of hauntology inspired by the weird and wonderful in both urban and the natural world. Before we get into that, we've had another review on Apple Podcasts. If you've not heard the podcast before, I often think that these reviews do a better job of describing the podcast than I can. This is from Marcus Neho. This feels like settling in with old friends for a cosy conversation in the pub about role-playing games. And that northern humour oozes through the pores of this podcast, which is always friendly and inclusive, and their earlier experiences certainly resonate. Difficulty finding gamers? Check. Deep freeze? Check. Always interesting and entertaining. I look forward to every episode of this, a gem amongst a slew of great RPG podcasts. You can even forgive their somewhat dodgy literary tastes. Please, no moorcock. Here's hoping that this podcast keeps going for a long time yet. Thanks for that, Marcus. All reviews are very appreciated as they're encouraging and help others find us. I have to say that if you're not a fan of Moorcock, then perhaps miss the next episode. But stay around this time for us to return to Liminal, or at least some inspiration for your Liminal games. I've just returned from a week away in London, and I'm always struck by the diversity of the city and how communities cluster in different pockets of the city, and how there are layers and layers of stories around every corner, in every underground station, from the magnificent buildings to the small ones, the discreet places tucked away behind walls and gardens. Walking through the city is immediately inspiring. I've also been reading Chaosium's new RPG for Rivers of London series of novels by Ben Aranovich. It's a light-touch application of the BRP rules, which are very easy to pick up and play. I like how the rulebook brings to life the Newtonian magic referenced in the novels. Combined, the city, the rules and the novels come together really well to evoke atmosphere and intriguing stories. And in my quest to find more urban fantasy to play, you'll hear more of Rivers of London in the future. However, why should the second city in England get all the attention? Manchester, which is just down the road from where I live, is a city filled with stories too. A city that gave birth to the industrial age, the computer, the modern chemistry, and much, much more, and it's got its own share of stories. And I really want to populate the city with my own campaign. At the Grognard Files Book Club, we spoke to comedian, scriptwriter, podcaster and best-selling novelist C.K. MacDonald about his series of novels, starting with The Stranger Times, about a newspaper investigating the weird and wonderful based in Manchester. We talk about the inspiration of Manchester and some of the techniques that he used in the novels that I think are very applicable to games, such as Loon Day, where the journalists invite in eccentrics with stories to tell, and that they relate them with a timer, like a speed date. I had a great time speaking to Keeve, and I'm sure you'll get a lot from listening to him. I was very careful not to include spoilers, in the hope that you'll read the Stranger Times novel yourself, or listen to the great audiobook. This podcast also features me and Judge Blythe, our resident rules lawyer, down at the pub, the Lasagowry, again in Manchester, reflecting on a more folk horror inspiration in the form of The Children of Stones, a children's drama first broadcast in the mid-70s. I'll be back at the end after some additional closing time chatter with some more information about forthcoming book clubs that you might want to attend. Until then, Ramblers, let's get rambling.
Book club!
Welcome to the book club, the Grognard Files book club that meets on the first Sunday of every month. It's a Sunday school for geeks. This time we're delighted to welcome into the Zoom of role-playing rambling none other than Queeve MacDonald. Hello there, Queeve.
Hello, very nice to be here.
I know where you're coming from, because we could have probably done this on a bit of plastic cup and string. Where in the world are you, Queeve? Where are you broadcasting from?
I'm actually just outside Manchester, sort of in Stock. I'm in between Stockport, Cheshire, and Manchester. I'm right in the every which way you drive. There's a sign welcoming you to somewhere else. So we're right in the middle of between the three of them. And
Manchester plays an important role in your books. Do you see it as an inspiration?
Oh yeah, it's massive. I mean, this is kind of, if you like, my love letter to Manchester is these books, really. Because I've lived, here for I think 15 years. I'm terrible with dates. Maybe about a bit less than that. But yeah, so I've just really loved Manchester. And interesting, my wife, who's from just outside London. Like those people always say, those people who join religions late in life and end up becoming more fundamentalist than anyone else. My wife is a Mancunian fundamentalist, where she used to literally promote Manchester around the world as a business destination and stuff. And so she knows all the facts about Manchester. Like, if anybody makes a dig about Manchester being rainy in conversation, I can see this little look at her face where she's about to give them the statistics, because it's only the 8th most rainiest city in Britain, by the way. That's scientifically proven. I mean, that's a scientist who is having a very slow day, but it is scientifically proven. So yeah, I love Manchester. I love the feel of the place, and yeah, I think I like to think of it as a character in the book.
We'll definitely come on to that. You originate from Manchester, so tell us a little bit about where you came from, because I think that's an important part of the kind of novelist you are.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously Irish. I was born in Limerick, but I was there for about 3 weeks. I just got the passport, and then I've moved to Dublin. So yeah, I mean, being Irish is a big part of my thing. Again, the Dublin I grew up in and Manchester, I always say, are remarkably similar places in a lot of ways. Things like just the music scene, arts being a big deal up here and stuff. I've lived in other parts of the country, and it's not the same vibe. Like, I really like Birmingham, but even mates of mine who run art stuff in Birmingham will tell you it's a lot harder to get stuff to happen there. Whereas in Dublin and Manchester, it just always seems to have if you do something and it's good, you can get people in, and it does have that feel to it where it will support these things. So yeah, I mean, Irish, but I've lived over here now since, nearly 25 years, the year 2000 when I came over to start stand-up and to do writing courses and stuff like that. And I've been here pretty much ever since.
Yeah, there is a lot of similarities, isn't there, between Dublin and Manchester, in the fact that they're quite compact cities, aren't they? That nothing's too far away to walk. I think that's
it's very true. I was actually in Dublin last weekend for a certain rugby match, and yeah, it did occur to me because I walked around all the main bookshops in like an hour, and the same in Manchester, where we used to live right in the centre of Manchester. I mean, it's basically used as a location. I don't know if it's in the novels, but it's definitely there's a podcast, the Stranger Times podcast, which is full of short stories. And one of them is about the Christmas Blitz, when Manchester, by and large, didn't get bombed by the Germans, but it did for 2 days. It got a heavy bombardment for 2 days just before Christmas. And I wrote a story based on that, which actually Jason Manford does in the podcast. It's all about the apartment building I used to live in is actually the base we use for it, because it was like just an incredible, what actually found it out. I did a ghost tour of Manchester I felt sorry for this bloke because it was my birthday. So it was all my mates. So I said, what do y'all do for a living? It was like, there's 12 stand-up comedians. And he was like, oh God, really? It's like, who else do you think's free at this time on a Tuesday? But yeah. So we did it, and that was one of the things that came up when he talked about the Christmas Blitz and how kids, basically teenagers, would stand on top of buildings, and their job was to kick off incendiary bombs. Because how bombing worked in World War II on both sides was you dropped incendiaries first, because then when the city was on fire, you could see it. So their whole job was to stop buildings going on fire. So that was one of the facts like that I found in my Manchester research that ended up becoming a story, because it's so, yeah, there's so many fascinating things like that.
Let's talk about Stranger Times, because as I say, we've been It's talking about it and discussing it this morning. So for anybody who's unfamiliar with it, do you want to give it a pitch?
Yeah, it's basically it's a newspaper based in Manchester that reports the weird and wonderful news from around the world. And the idea is it's kind of like the Fortean Times, which I'm sure a lot of you know in this group particularly. My idea was as an obsessive fan of them, I literally have 2 shelves full of them beside me here. I just like the idea of doing a kind of low rent tabloid version of the Fortean Times. And I had this idea for years to the point where the Stranger Times is actually based on a sitcom idea I must have written. Actually, I was 16 years ago, probably now. I still haven't found, I keep trying to find the script of it, but I haven't found it yet. I sort of wrote the whole thing. All the characters were sort of there. And yeah, it was based on that. And I liked the idea of being in a newspaper that reports the weird and wonderful. And then I came back to it as a novel idea. And literally the moment of inspiration was, well, how will I handle this? What would be the thing with it? And it was like, well, they're going to have to find out that some of the stuff is actually true. So I kind of came at it from the newspaper, and then I built the world around the newspaper when I decided what I wanted to be. And I kind of hit on the idea early on that quite most of the myths and stuff that we know have elements of truth in them, and all the sort of, so they're all sort of a different take on them, but they have different elements of truth in them.
There's some good characters around this newspaper offices, but as readers, our way into it is through Hannah Willis, and how did you come up with her, and why did you choose that as a character to kind of introduce this world?
It's kind of when you're coming into a world like that, it's you have to be aware of the reader. You're trying to tell the reader what it is, and it's always, I'm sure as you do role playing and all that, world building is massive. But you don't want to do dumps of it and stuff. So it's just a natural way of writing, I think, is you take somebody who's completely new to the world and you make them the eyes of it. And I like the idea of, I had the idea of a woman coming through a divorce and stuff like this and trying to restart her life. And she ended up in Manchester entirely by accident and didn't know anything about the place. That's the great thing. You can put her in there. Literally, she knows nothing about it. So she can react to everything, and she can, be the not just the eyes, but the whole sensation for the reader, where they can kind of follow her through it. A lot of the time in the first 3 books, we're kind of following Hannah. It becomes less and less as you start probably go through, because the other characters, so you follow them more as well. But yeah, she's definitely the way of introducing the world. I mean, the first 3 or 4 chapters of the book, I'd have to check exactly when it is, but all the stuff with the job interview, up to the point where Bancroft shoots himself in the foot. Vast majority of that was my memory of being in the sitcom script that I wrote. Because I basically wrote that script. My agent at the time had no interest in it. I don't actually even sent it to anybody. My Dublin books, because I've written books under Queen as well, and they were thankfully taken off at that point. And I had an agent and stuff, and they're like, well, do you want to do something different? And at the time, I was genuinely trying to write a quote unquote serious crime book. And I had I've always got pin boards and stuff. I had like a pin board in my office at the time with like 8 or 9 different serious crime books on it. And I woke up one morning, remembered the Stranger Times idea. And sorry, my watch keeps breaking in here. I've got an Apple Watch so we have the same thing where they will just start talking to you when you're trying to talk to someone else. But yeah, so I literally had this idea for years. I'd kind of forgotten about it. I always remember I got up, got in the shower, thinking, oh yeah, I remember that. I really enjoyed it. As my editor found this out, he thinks it's hilarious, but I always do most of my thinking in the shower. And I was literally thinking, I really enjoyed that idea. And then I started walking through Manchester to get to my writing office at the time. At the time, I lived right in the centre in that flat I was talking about earlier on. And it was a 25-minute walk. And literally, it was one of those things, weirdest experience I had in my life in terms of writing was like, I was walking around going, it's here, it's based here. This is where that story makes sense. Like I put some pictures up on Facebook a while ago because people kept asking me. But the church that the Church of All Souls is based, or All Souls is based on, is actually on my way to my office. That's now a community centre. It's been repurposed but I literally had that and went, oh, well, that's that. And then it was like, I mean, the first few scenes in the book, there's a warehouse and stuff. That's up near where my old office was. It was all just came like to the point I was running up the stairs in my old creaky old office building by the time I got there to try and get all these ideas down. Because it was the idea of the Stranger Times and the world of Manchester just came together beautifully for me. And I was really excited to write it then.
And it is dialogue rich, isn't it? And is that because it started as a sitcom, or is that the way that you think in terms of creating novels?
That's very, I think that's the thing people point. I mean, I've done like 16 novels now between all the Bunny books and the 3 Stranger Times, and there's a 4th one already written now. Dialogue is kind of my main tool in my box, really. When I don't know what's going on, I get people in a room and they start having a conversation. And I do, like, character is big for me, and how you find out the characters is you get them annoyed about something, you get them in, you don't want them to just sit there and tell you what they like and dislike. You want to get it into conversation and they mold themselves through. Like very random stuff will come up when I'm writing where I'll just have them go into a segue and I sort of leave it in. Sometimes I cut it out in the end, but it all ends up informing the character where I find out their opinions because they literally just, as silly as it sounds, they tell me. They literally just start telling me this. Well, they start with and dialogue I've always found quite easy to write. I guess I was writing scripts for years. I wrote a lot of scripts over the years. So I guess I think I always, like when I started trying to write a novel, I had to learn how to write prose because I hadn't really done much of that. But dialogue and stuff was always there. Like that's the note I've had from every editor, which is, I'm not going to tell you anything about dialogue. You know what you're doing. I'll just tell you about other stuff. So
we observed that there's not a lot of physical description of the characters, but they come alive through how they speak and, as you say, how they respond to different things that happen to them.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's been because it's, to be honest, it was something I had was, I don't spend enough time talking about what people are wearing and buildings and stuff. And always my wife, who's kind of my first editor, she runs our publishing company and stuff now as well, and she has an editorial background. But she went, "You were out with the pub last night with like the three lads." I was like, "Yeah." "Could you tell me what any of them were wearing at the time?" I was like, "No." I said, "No, because you don't care." And it's genuine. It's just part. It's even not outside of being a writer. It's like I spend most of my time in jeans or shorts and a t-shirt, and it's like that's not something that really interests me. So when I describe someone's clothing, it's usually for a fairly good reason, but I much prefer finding a different way because I just don't think clothes define people. And even when it comes to like things and descriptions of buildings and stuff like that, like I'm a massive fan of Ben Aranovic's work, and I'm sure loads of people here know Ben Aranovic's work very well. And one of the many things Ben does brilliantly, he gives very detailed descriptions of buildings and stuff like that. And the thing is, a lot of the time when authors do that, it's just a bit dull. Ben, I point out, Ben's isn't like that because Ben has a great way of writing that stuff. And I think he has a genuine fascination and interest in it that he manages to bring across brilliantly. And it really adds to the world. But I think it's one of those things, I'm sure there's a few people here who are writing and stuff. I think one of the things I learned is don't try and be what someone else is as a writer. So like if Ben Aranovich is great at that, I'll do some of that, but I really don't, if it's not something that comes naturally to me, I shouldn't try and force it in there because I think it comes across then as just dumping stuff in for the sake of it. So I think, whereas with me, dialogue is how I meet the world and, how I let people find out. So that's the kind of the way I paint the colors of the story, if you like.
Yeah, just one more thing on that dialogue. There's a lot of love for the audible version of this book, saying that the guy does a great job of characterizing the different people in there.
Yeah, Bren does an extraordinary job, and I'm a very lucky. I've got the guy who does my other books, Morgan, is also very good. But yeah, and Brendan, to be honest, shouldn't have. If I'm in all honesty, and he's a good mate of mine now, so I can tell you this. But literally, Morgan was going to do these books, and then Morgan had a health thing where he couldn't do them. And they went, "Oh, we'll just get another middle-aged white Irish guy." And we're like, "Oh no, doesn't need to be a middle-aged white Irish guy just because the other guy was a middle-aged white Irish guy." But they actually got Brendan stuff, and then they said, we actually said just on principle, can we get some female voices and try to get some Mancunians and stuff like that? And we actually got other people in. But Brendan was just the best. Like we went, because there's a lot. That's the thing. I'm a nightmare for narrators because I put a lot of different characters. Like he has to do this. Stella Grace is based on my mother-in-law, including the West African accent and stuff. So he had to figure out how to do all that stuff. And I think the greatest compliment I can give him is a mate of mine who's a Mancunian as it comes. And he texted me once and went, "This guy nails a Mancunian accent perfectly." And he really does. Several people have said that to me at events and stuff like that. But yeah, he does an absolutely wonderful job. And weirdly, as far as I'm concerned, he should be working every week just doing audiobooks, but he's bizarrely not being used that much by other people, which I find bizarre when he's done that good a job. So hopefully that's going to change.
Are you a gamer? Have you had experience gaming?
Yes, if you look over there, there's my painting station. So we can see over there's some of the stuff I haven't painted yet. I'll be honest with you, I had to write the last Stranger Times novel. I've just finished it, but because we moved house and then stuff, I had to write it quite quickly. So it turned out when I was bored, I only took up kind of the hobby seriously last year. When I was bored, I kept buying stuff on breaks from writing things, and then they all showed up, and I'm like, I figured out during the week, if I paint like a Blood Bowl team or a thing a week or like a series of characters, I have enough stuff to paint until September. I really need to stop myself. So yeah, I started playing because I kind of went looking for a hobby last year, and I've always enjoyed that sort of stuff and wanted to do it. But because it was a stand-up, your hours and your schedule is a bit of a nightmare. You can't really do regular stuff. So I play Blood Bowl a lot. And I had my first game of D&D, would you believe, 3 days ago. Because I've been looking for a group for ages, so I had to go with that. And I'm really keen. I have the Rivers of London role playing game, and I'm sort of getting into doing a lot more of that stuff now and exploring it. And maybe the Stranger Times at some point. I'd love the idea of doing it into some kind of a game. I don't know how that would work yet, but I'm enjoying the idea of exploring different avenues like RPGs and Zombicide is the other thing I've got. Zombicide Black Plague, because a mate of mine just turned 50 and he's a big zombie fan. He's so much so he has a zombie room in his house where his wife just lets him put all the zombie stuff because people keep buying him zombie stuff. And she quite rightly doesn't want it around the rest of her lovely house. So there's a room in Gary's house which is just full of zombies. And I got that as something to try and get him into a bit of gaming as well.
I'm just going to make a note of that. Please, can I have a zombie room?
Yeah. I mean, you need quite a big house, if I'm honest. I mean, the two of them are both professional stand-up comedians who've done pretty well for themselves, so they have enough room. But yeah, you need quite the big house for the zombie room.
So you've had your first game of D&D, so welcome aboard the cult. Any time that you had previously in your life is now going to evaporate before your very eyes. In role-playing games, there is a current trend for games that are based in urban settings where industrialized worlds where the fae and the fairies are taken off. So as you mentioned, Rivers of London's recently been adapted. We've got one called Vaesen, which is set in Scandinavia. And there's also a popular one, a small press one called Liminal that explores that space. What do you think's so appealing about it?
One of the great things about Rivers of London is that magic lives side by side with our world, which I guess is obviously in my books as well. And I think that's interesting. I think the idea that these things could be happening around you are in itself quite fascinating. Like I've used examples of stuff in the books. I don't know if anyone in the group, anyone who does know Manchester, I know the guy has a name. I can't remember it now. My wife was telling me, but there's a guy that goes, cycles up and down Oxford Road in Manchester with a boombox with music playing so loudly that it's like, you can barely hear what it is. It's so distorted. But, what I love and the most fun thing about certainly writing kind of urban fantasy stuff like that is you can just take that kind of weird, wonderful thing in itself and you can go, oh, I could come up with a reason as to why he's actually doing that. Like, as in there's a magical reason that he's warding something off or something. You can kind of take this weird stuff and change it around. And of course, the great thing, if you put it into an urban setting, like the great thing with Terry Pratchett books, which are, I've got in trouble for this because I did a top 5 list of my favorite Terry Pratchett books, and I didn't have any of the Witches books in it, which I probably was wrong about. But my reason for that is really the thing I love most about Terry Pratchett books is Ankh-Morpork. I think the city itself is incredible. The great thing with Terry Pratchett books is they reflect on humanity, and you could talk about the world we live in by using that world. So I guess if you bring fantasy with an urban setting, you could also talk about the kind of lives we live more, while obviously doing something completely different as well at the same time. And I think that mix is probably appealing to people, hopefully.
Yeah, I think the other thing we observed was something that you mentioned earlier, that where you've got urban decay in amongst urban renewal, there's stories, isn't there, in the abandoned places and those canals and old buildings.
Oh yeah, especially when there's fascinating stuff at Manchester. Like there's canals that go on. Like there's loads. It's kind of actually, it's getting similar with Dublin. I know this is quite similar to a few other places, but there's loads of canals that are buried literally under modern cities. That they're literally running through these places. And there's a fascinating thing that ended up inspiring quite a lot with the Stranger Times, where there's a large cavern directly under central Manchester. I think was used for when ferries used to come in underground and stuff. But I think someone described it, and the thing was, it's the site, you could fit a cathedral inside it. And what's fascinating was it was used, urban explorers used to go down there. Then I think a development company from China, I believe, bought a large tract of land in Manchester. And now there's this massive, they're not allowed in there anymore. And there's a massive cavern in the center of Manchester that no one knows what it's being used for. It's being used for anything. But that kind of stuff is great. When I found that out with the ghost tour, like when I did the ghost tour with the guy, because it ended up being a really good way of finding out different things. And he was like, what kind of stuff do you want to know? Want me to tell you? It was like, literally don't try and tell me anything you wouldn't tell somebody else, because you'd be amazed at stuff that I will find fascinating. And like, that was something that I loved. And there's loads of different things like that. There was a great story I haven't used yet, but Manchester was part of a revolt at one point where, you know, they joined an army and they were coming down from the north and they got defeated, whoever they were fighting. I can't remember. But he did tell us at one point, he was like, they put heads on spikes, as they always did in olden times, to show people, what goes on if you dare go against the king. And he said, and those spikes were, they're actually sort of just about there where M&S is now. That's where the spikes would be. And I have this lovely idea in my head, because he knew the exact spot. And I kind of went, so you can have the ghost of two heads on spikes sitting in the M&S cafe. And that was like the idea that popped into my head, which I still haven't used, but I love it as a concept. So yeah, I mean, there's all this stuff with cities, and it is, it's, as you know, it's with cities themselves. It's, you put a lot of people into a small space. Weird things happen, there's conflict, there's all this kind of stuff. Like, I used to live in the centre of Manchester. You'd see all kinds of weird stuff, not just people throwing up outside your apartment, although that did happen quite a lot. So yeah, a lot of stuff like that, where just to bring a lot together into a small place, and just weird and wonderful things can happen.
This is the first book I've read, and it's currently 3 books. Is there a plan to do more in this series?
Yes, we're signed up for 3 more, and I just finished writing the 4th, which is called Relight My Fire.
And the background of the kind of fair, the were creatures, is kind of hinted at, although not fully developed in the first one. Does that get developed further in the subsequent novels and stories?
Yeah, I mean, it sort of builds on that, and yeah, so we start building into the world, because the whole point of the books is they don't know what's going on, and they kind of start discovering it. But it does certainly get built on. And in fact, something I had to do probably about a year ago now is it's been optioned by a company called Playground, who did like Little Women and various different things. And they have a deal with Paramount to develop Stranger Times in the States. And there's like, I don't know what to spell. It's a weird thing with TV and your books. You don't really get kept up to date. I have 2 things that are currently optioned, and they really don't tell you anything a lot of the time. But like, there's actually writers in Australia. I think one of them wrote Vikings, the main writer, and she was one of the writers of Vikings. But I had a meeting with her, and she said, "How does magic work in the world?" And she's like, I was like, well, they're kind of discovering as they go. And she, yeah, but we're writing the TV series. We need to know. We can't discover it as So I had to actually sit down and write out a Bible for how the whole world works. If I'm entirely honest, initially I was going, oh God, no, this is going to be a nightmare. And I loved it. I literally started coming up with these things and figuring out my take on a kind of a magic system and a basic magic system and all the different races and stuff like that. And it gave me so many more ideas, and it made the world so much bigger and realer to me that I ended up, I've got so many ideas out of it. I can't wait to write it. But yeah, we are discovering the world as we go through it. But then I'm also going on weird tangents. Like book 4 is zombies, effectively. There's a version of zombies, which came out entirely of the fact I was looking for a name for another idea. I started looking at it because all the song titles, apart from the first book, they're all like this Charming Man, Love Will Tear Us Apart, Relight My Fire. And I literally was looking for a title for something. I texted my mate Gary and said, Relight My Fire is a very funny name for a zombie book, isn't it? He said that or Back for Good of the 2, take that things. And I literally came up with I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm really proud of the book. I think it's the best one in the series, the 4th one. And it literally came up with the whole idea for the book, essentially in about 20 minutes, because I was just inspired by what my version of zombies would be. Yeah, it was a huge fun to write, and I'm really excited to get it out. It's coming out in January, so I'm very excited about it getting out there.
So well done. You've had your first game of D&D, and you've produced your first role-playing supplement. Well on the way for the role-playing game.
Well, I keep people saying, "Oh, you could be a dungeon master." You're just like, God, that's kind of my job. Like, you know what I mean? Creating a whole new word, brilliant. Yeah, that's gonna be as it is. My agent keeps going about stuff like, "Do you want to make that into a job?" I was like, no, because I used to, generally, I was a stand-up comedian. I enjoyed comedy, became a stand-up comedian. I enjoyed TV. I ended up becoming a TV writer. My favorite sport is rugby. I ended up working for 13 years as an announcer for London Irish, which is one of the rugby clubs and in Britain. And then, my boss was going, oh, this, you could try and look at do a tie-in. My agent was going, there's a good tie-in. It was like, I don't want to make every hobby I ended up becoming a job. Having said that, I have come up with a very good idea for a Blood Bowl movie that I may end up pitching to them.
Oh, I'm intrigued about that, but I'll let you keep that hidden for now.
Yeah. I haven't written anything down yet, so I don't know if it's going to be any good enough, but I'm literally going to ring my agent on Tuesday and go, I know this is a long shot, but do you think Games Workshop want to do a Blood Bowl? It's not one of their most popular games, so I doubt it, but hey, never know.
I think the appeal for the setting in terms of role-playing games is that the way that it's set up with the investigative team of characters is a good device. And we also enjoyed Loon Day as a way of generating stories, talking about biscuits, which is one of this podcast's favourite subjects.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I did. I was on when it first came out. I was on Simon Mayo, and they ended up talking quite a lot about biscuits. It's like I can't even remember which biscuits I said were the best ones. I just sort of randomly said some stuff. And to be honest, now I'm on a gluten-free diet. I can't eat much biscuits, so it's really fantasy that part. But yeah, it's Loon Day is brilliant, and it's as a device, it's a dream come true because you generate so many things. It's a great way of getting information into the story as well and stuff. Because I get asked that a lot about, writing comedy with various different things. And one of the great things that comedy can give you is because, any kind of crime book, really almost any book, it's all about the author trying to slip certain key pieces of information in without drawing too much attention to them and stuff, particularly in crime. And the great thing with humor is you can slip a key piece of information in, and if you find a way to put it into something that's humorous, people think that's the reason that conversation happened, where it's actually a great way of slipping something in. So when it works like that, it can be really powerful. But Loon Day it's in the third book as well. There's a whole Loon Day thing, and it just ends up being a lot of fun to write. It ends up becoming quite a big bit just because there's so much fun you can have with it. And it's a great way of having... It's like you can have little side quests come up. It's a great way for launching the B and C story because the books, if you probably noticed, I think certainly in the later ones, there's B and C stories. There's a lot going on in them, but which I kind of like, but it does make them challenging to write in the sense that my board here is like I had to find extra colored cards to show points of view because there's only 4 color cards in most books, most things, and I needed more of them. So they're quite complicated stories that way. But Loon Day is brilliant for putting in little side quests, shall we say?
And striking that tone must be difficult as well. You mentioned the humour, and there is a dark investigative crime tone. So which supersedes the other? So which are you trying to balance the most? The comedy or the crime, dark crime?
To be honest, I've sort of said this in interviews quite a lot, and I really feel strongly. I don't think comedy is a genre at all. I think comedy is a style of telling a story. Mm-hmm. And I think when people go wrong is when they're honestly trying to be funny. Like when I'm just like, even on Loon Day and stuff, I have people coming up and there's various different ideas they're presenting. And I want to sort of reflect the kind of Fortean world, if you like. They're all sort of variations on Fortean themes. You write the story, so you always have to respect the story, and you kind of could keep the stakes high and all that kind of thing. And then when they're in trouble, they're in trouble. And then the humor is sort of there as flavoring. So it's always the humor has to serve the story and not the other way around. I think I was asked in a thing, and I was giving some advice to students, and I said, if the only reason somebody walks into a room is because you have a joke about something that happens in that room, get him out of that room and burn down that house because you're in the wrong place, because that's not how you write these things. You need to be telling the story. The reason someone goes into a room is because they have to be there. And it's always that you got to keep that narrative drive, I think. Otherwise, because I've read a lot of comedy writing books, and some of them are great and some not so much. And Ben Aranovich is a good example where he has very funny bits in the books, but they're always driving the story. And I think that's really important.
And do you still stand up? Are you a full-time novelist now?
Full-time. I retired in 2019, which, as my mate Gaz says, is probably the finest piece of comedic timing in my career, where I gave up just before everyone else had to stop for a year.
My favourite revelation in here, which I knew all along, is that the devil's favourite music is Enya. I kind of knew that anyway.
Well, that's kind of inspired by a comedian called Steve Hughes, who some of you might have seen there's a great clip of him and Apollo about people being offended, if you've seen that. He's a big Australian dude. He's a metaler. But what's great is he's into death metal and Enya. And he's always explained it to people. So, oh no, so you don't know, it's exactly the same thing. They're just two sides of the same coin. And he's quite an intense guy, and he goes into these things about Enya that every comic on the circuit's heard at some point. So I think that was part of my little tribute to him.
It's been great spending some time with you this morning, Queeve, so thank you very much for that. And thank you very much to Jonathan, who actually connected us. So
cheers, John.
Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot. Lovely to meet you all. And genuinely, I'm very excited to get into my role playing more and more now. So I'm very excited to see where it goes. So thank you very much. I won't be hitting you up for recommendations and stuff, because I definitely want to try a few different indie games, particularly the urban setting ones. I will definitely be hitting them up. So yeah, great.
Crocodile Box.
Welcome to the room of role-playing rambling. We're in the snug of the Lass Gallery. Happy day, Blythe.
Happy day, Dirk.
Happy day. You know, sometimes I wish that I was in the vicinity of a May guy who was going to get me with a death ray and put me into a form of stupor, a kind of blissful ignorance. So it's very appealing.
It's a life goal, isn't it? It's a death ray, though. What? How does that make you happy? It's a death ray. Yeah, I don't know. Well, yeah, we'll come on to that. We'll come on to confusing plots later, won't we?
Yeah. So we're going to talk about Children of the Stones, which was first broadcast in the UK in 1977. Ran for 7 episodes. It was on ITV, produced by HTV, who obviously did Robin of Sherwood as well.
Yeah, they did, didn't they? HTV, yeah.
They were a real production house. They did a lot of those 70s TV serials. Did you watch them? They did like on at 4:45, weren't they?
Yeah, I used to watch all those things. I remember loads of them, yeah. There was Chucky.
Chucky?
I remember one called Raven.
I don't remember that one.
That was, again, the thing is, I was quite young at the time. I was a child. But I was a young child. I wasn't a teenager, so I must have been about 8 or 9 when Children of the Stones was on. And similarly, a lot of those TV series of the 70s, I was quite young. Now, I mean, it's all a bit cloudy, and there may have been repeats when I was a bit older. But equally, I think some of them were just slightly beyond me for my age, and they're still a bit confusing. But I do remember them being quite creepy.
Yes.
If there was one consistent element to it, it was creepy.
Yeah.
I remember Raven. I'm not sure if it was him. What's he called out of? God, what's his name now? Phil
Daniels.
I'm not sure it was Phil Daniels in Raven.
Oh, right.
I might be wrong. But he looked a bit like him. And Raven, yeah, it was like some weird thing with a coal mine in ancient Egypt. It was like a strange thing where he was some reincarnated something
or Aztec thing.
I think it was Aztec, so whether it was he I don't know.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
I can't remember that.
But I do remember it being creepy and weird.
I have very little memory of them. Children of the Stones, I remember elements of it, but like you say, it's a bit fuzzy.
Yeah.
I have better memories around this time of watching the New Avengers, because people make a big deal about children's television, but at that time there wasn't a watershed, was there? So we were watching TV programmes that were meant for adults.
Yeah, I think they're a bit blurred. I mean, Children of the Stones made quite an impression on me. I do remember it quite vividly, and when I say vividly, I don't quite remember the plot, and we've rewatched it. So some of it was like, oh yeah, okay, I don't remember that. But I do remember the general gist of it, and I do think it made a marked impression on me, because it was very creepy. The soundtrack, for example, all that weird...
the Ambrosian singers.
Yeah, that was weird.
I do.
You're doing it a bit too well. But it's quite remarkable, isn't it, that just the soundtrack can creep you out. You know, it did, mate. It was a really creepy soundtrack, and quite an impact on me as a kid. Possibly, I'd go as far as to say the scariest thing I watched as a kid.
Yeah,
I think when you got into the 80s, I remember things like Armchair Thriller. Do you remember Armchair Thriller? Yeah. And they were scary. I remember something called The Black Nun. It was really, really scary. Nun without a face. That was all creepy.
Hammer House of Horror.
Hammer House of Horror was...
The house that bled to death.
That's right. Yeah.
Charlie Boy, yeah.
But they were a bit later. They were kind of very late 70s, almost 80s, so I was a bit older. But when I think back to being sort of at primary school, I suppose, Children of the Stones was possibly the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. And when I rewatched it, I thought, why? It's not that scary. But I think it was the soundtrack and...
Yeah, it does got a kind of atmosphere of dread, and there was something...
The soundtrack, and I think some of the performances in it as well.
Yeah.
Even though the script's a bit clunky at times, some of the performances in it are quite good. The guy who plays the main villain, he's quite good in it, isn't he? He's kind of like a slightly domineering figure. Yeah, Ian Cuthbertson. He's good actors, you know, and Freddie Jones is in it, isn't he?
Even the children actors are good, aren't they?
Pretty good, yeah.
Who plays Sandra, who has that kind of blank look that is terrifying, isn't it, when she is converted?
When she's converted, yeah. But I'm sure we'll come on to all that.
And it's all down to, it was that time in TV when one person could influence the production. So in HTV, so it's known as it's HTV Wales, isn't it? Harlech TV. So it's around Bristol area.
Yeah.
And they had like a workshop for kids, and there's this guy who called Patrick Drumgoole, and he was the production manager for HTV, and he kind of had an attitude that children shouldn't be spoken down to.
Yeah.
And this idea that actually they like being scared.
Yeah. That's true, isn't it? They do. Yeah. Kids enjoy being scared.
Because that's the thing that people say. Would these things be made now? And I don't think they would, because things are commissioned, aren't they, by committee and have to be tested and have to fit into particular things. But it was that time of TV production where one person could actually say, this is what we're going to do.
People were given like a license to do what they wanted to do, and that on the one hand led to some terrible rubbish, but it also led to some brilliant stuff as well, because it hadn't been created by a committee. Which is one of the problems, isn't it, that once you get a great idea, put it through a committee, put it through a million different opinions, suddenly what pops out the other side is not very good, a bit bland, that kind of thing.
Like a bit bland and a bit knowing. Right? If it was produced now, I think it'd be a bit knowing, bit kind of a wink to the audience. Well, this is the reason why it works is that it feels like it's all played for real.
Yeah.
It's based, even though it's like ludicrous. But it's kind of based. It kind of makes sense in the world that they're in.
Yeah, and I suppose it's set in a real location, isn't it? It's set in Avebury, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is a village surrounded by a stone circle. So
it comes back to that liminal thing that Paul was saying last time.
It does,
Pick an area and just create your own history for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in this, it's called Milbury.
That's right.
But it's quite clearly Avebury, isn't it?
Yeah. But I mean, as a kid, I didn't know what Avebury was. Again, that's the thing, isn't it? It's called Milbury. But when I was 8, I didn't know where Avebury was. I couldn't even Google it, could I then? So it just looked like a place that really was convincingly a village surrounded by standing stones, which Avebury is. But it looked like, this is a real place, I didn't know, I thought it was real, but it like you say, there's kind of convincing, there's something convincing about it, in a way. Yeah.
So I've got a prefab sprout game for you.
Okay.
These are just TV series from HTV.
Yeah.
I think there's 4 of them, right? And out of the 4, I've made up one.
You made one up, okay.
Yeah, and the rest of them were broadcast in the 1970s.
Okay.
All right, okay. Let me do the first one. Okay.
All right.
You've got to pick them. You're not very good at this, it has to be said.
No, we got this, but I was alive in the 70s and I watched the telly. I must have some kind of edge on this one.
Okay. King of the Castle, 1977. Need a bit more on that? Go on, King of the Castle.
I think.
I'll give you a thing. So Roland Wright falls down a lift shaft of a tower block and ends up in a fantasy parallel existence. That is King of the Castle.
Falls down a lift shaft and ends up in a parallel fantasy existent world, like Narnia. Like Lion the Witch in the elevator.
Yeah, something like that.
What you do, right? Lion the Witch in the elevator.
Going down.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Is that a real one, or did I make that up? So,
all right. Okay.
Next one.
Yeah.
Next one is called Sky.
Sky.
1975. A young time traveller with superhuman powers is stranded on Earth after running into a black hole.
Okay.
He's helped on his way home by 3 children. That's Sky.
All right.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What do you think of that one?
Both are plausible. I think that's a bit more plausible than the King of the Castle. Wow. What's the fantasy world he's drawn into in the lift shaft? What's kind of fantasy world is it?
It's one that he is already constructed, I think.
Oh, right, okay.
And he finds himself falling into his own imagination.
Right.
Next one,
Go on.
Time Tome. Time Tome is from 1974, and two schoolboys from Bristol discover a journal from a time traveller which reveals horrific secrets, but that he wants it back.
Okay.
A time traveller wants it back.
That sounds good. You made that up. That sounds quite good. Get onto HTV.
Time Tome.
Time Tome.
Yeah.
Time Tome. Okay. All right.
The next one,
Yeah.
The Clifton House Mystery, 1978. A family move into an old house which is haunted by a ghost of a soldier. So that's the Clifton House Mystery, 1978. So which of those is the ringer? Which is the one that I made up?
I don't know. I thought when you said you're doing this, I thought this is going to be easy because I was alive at the time and watched the telly. So I thought...
We were watching New Avengers. I believe that. We've all got false
Mind you,
memories about it.
1974, I was 6, possibly 5, depending on when it was broadcast. So, I don't think I'd have been watching some of these things.
Time Tome. I don't
remember watching Time Tome because I would have been too young, unless it was repeated. But again, they did do that, didn't they?
Yeah.
They did repeat things.
I mean, that's the strange thing about these programmes, isn't it? Is that they were quite ephemeral as well, weren't they? Because they weren't expecting us to be
Talking about them now.
Yeah, 50 years later, going, oh yes, well, this is what I think about this particular programme.
Well, and I suppose what they didn't consider, like Children of the Stones, you can buy that on DVD, you could buy it you watch it on YouTube. They wouldn't have considered that would have been an option.
Yeah.
So they would have thought, this is going to be broadcast in 1977.
I'll take my fee.
I'll take my fee, thanks very much. It'd never be shown again. Possibly repeated in 1978, and that would have been that.
Yeah.
You know, reuse the tape, wipe over it, which has happened, hasn't it? Lots of Doctor Who episodes have been erased. So, yeah, I know what you mean.
So what are you going for? Sky, King of the Castle, Time Tome, or the Clifton House Mystery? Which one are you going to say is my ringer?
Clifton. Well, Clifton House Mystery seems a bit like the odd one out. And the others are all a bit over the top sci-fi, fantasy, parallel universe, time traveller stuff, whereas Clifton House is about a ghost. Yeah. That seems plausible that they would come up with a ghost story. So that seems the odd one out, but at the same time, it seems completely plausible.
So what are you going
Don't
for?
look at me like that.
I'm going to push you on. I'm going to have to push you on this.
People can't say you're looking at me when I say these things like I'm an idiot. You look at him, he doesn't know. Look at him, he doesn't know the stuff I've made. You could have made up any of those, any of them. I suppose the two that I smell a slight rat is Time Tome and Sky.
Right. So which one are you going to go for?
I don't know. Can I roll a d4?
Yeah, go on.
Okay. I'm going for King of the Castle. Oh no, I don't know. Why'd you do this to me? Why'd you do this? You find it amusing, but I don't know if I do anymore.
You'll have to do one for me.
I know, but Time Tome. You made Time Tome up.
For the first time, you've got one right. Well done. Time Tome is made up by me.
Whoa.
The rest of them were on.
Do you know what gave it away?
What?
You used the word tome. I don't think people were... I mean, it was a word in the 1970s. It's not a made-up word. But I don't think people were using the word tome in the 70s. I think that's been... kind of came later.
Yeah. Well, there's a liminal adventure for you, isn't it? A time tome, a schoolboy is finding a time traveller's diary. Yeah.
They all seemed ridiculous. I was going to say they all seem made up. They are all made up. They're not documentaries, are they? No. But, yeah.
So let's have a look at Children of the Stones then. So, how do you summarise it? Well, I suppose the main thing is that it features an academic and his son who are travelling into Millbury.
Yeah. Well, they go there, don't they? Because he's doing some research on the stones, isn't he? He's doing
an
research.
astrophysicist.
He's an astrophysicist, and he's doing some research. He takes his teenage son to Millbury, and the man who lives in the manor house, the lord of the manor. Yeah. He's not the lord of the manor, is he? He's bought the manor house, hasn't he?
Yes.
He's another astrophysicist, isn't it? Who discovered a supernova, didn't he?
Yeah.
So he's a kind of quite famous astrophysicist. So they kind of
And
bump into each other, don't they?
They bump into each other, but there's also kind of an indication that he may have invited him here and set it up because they come into this house, don't they, with Mrs. Crabtree.
That's right.
With a bacon, egg and chocolate cake, which has got some kind of sinister connotation at some point, isn't it?
She's like a house. They live with her, don't they? She's like a kind of... It's her house, but it's like a kind of... I don't know, what is it? It's not a B&B, is it? It's just her house that they live at. They lodge at her house, effectively, don't they?
Yeah.
And she makes, well, I would say, poor breakfast. They're eating like a scrambled egg or something, aren't they?
Yeah.
And it's just like a scrambled egg, and you think, it's full English here. You know what I mean? Oh, well, Mrs. Crabtree's made us some breakfast. It's an omelette. It's a plain omelette. Come on. How much are they paying her?
Yeah, and we know that Adam Brake, who's played by Gareth Thomas, Blake,
yeah, he's played by Gareth Thomas.
Blake,
yeah.
Gareth Thomas from Blake 7. And we know he's an academic, because he's got that slightly officious air, that kind of air that...
Posh and pompous, isn't he?
Like really pompous.
Yeah.
Correcting everybody.
Yeah.
And then wearing his dog tooth check jacket.
Yeah, and a weird green coat that I can't work out whether it's leather or whether it's just some weird 70s fabric.
Yes.
But it does look like something. If someone said to me that coat later appears with some metal studs on it in Blake 7, I'd believe him, because it's like a weird coat, isn't it, that he wears at certain points.
Yes.
I can't get my head around that.
And his primary role is just to explain everything, isn't it, to his son, but also to us. Yeah.
And also, I think it's primary role is to explain things, but also by doing that, he's quite willing to believe the most ridiculous things, isn't he?
Yeah.
So his son will say something like, "Oh, maybe it's some kind of mind control," and he'll go, "Yes, maybe it is." And a normal dad would say, "Get out of it! What are you talking about? Mind control? Go on, go do your homework." That's what our dads would say. They wouldn't go, you could be onto something here. Mind control, maybe through the supernova, maybe through some kind of astral channel. Are you suggesting that the stones have some kind of magnetic power? Yes, Dad, I am. Oh, right. Go and do your homework.
Yeah. Well, they quickly established, don't they, that there's something amiss in this place, because people say happy day.
People are weird, aren't they?
People are weird.
People are weird, yeah.
They are in a kind of blissful state they're highly intelligent, but at the same time, very compliant.
And the happy day thing. And again, joking apart, I remember as a kid, that was quite a good mechanism in the programme of making you feel weird, because when someone said happy day, you knew then, didn't you, that they'd been turned. It's a bit like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, isn't it? That there are certain characters in it who are weird and say happy day, and then there's other characters in it that they meet, a minority of people who don't do it, and share some of the same suspicions until the point that they'll say happy day. Yeah. And you think, oh right, you've gone, you've been turned, you're a cultist or whatever, you're a weird kind of And it's quite good. And I do remember as a kid, apart from the soundtrack, weird soundtrack, which was creepy. But I remember that being quite a scary thing, because it implies that kind of mind control, doesn't it? That people who were like you are suddenly not like you.
Yeah.
And that happy day. That's all they have to do, isn't it? All they have to say, isn't it?
Yeah.
They'll do a scene with someone, and they'll say, "Oh well, yeah, see you tomorrow," and they go, "Yeah, it's happy day," and you think, "Oh right, oh that's you." Yeah. Oh no.
I suppose it harks back as well to The Prisoner, doesn't it? That kind of closed.
Yeah. Be seeing you. Yes. Well, people who say that are sort of in some weird inner circle, or something's happened to them in some way.
Be seeing you.
Yeah. Quite sinister, isn't it? Happy day. It's quite sinister.
Yeah.
But it's quite good, because it does. I say as a kid, it scared you, because you thought, what's happened to these people? They were all right last episode, and now, some of the school kids, doesn't it? He goes to school, and the kids are very compliant, and there's a few kids that aren't, but eventually those kids who he makes friends with. There's a lad, isn't there, who he makes friends with.
Yeah.
There's a girl that he makes friends with, Sandra, but there's a boy he makes friends with, and he, a few episodes in, he starts saying happy day, and you think, oh, we've got him, you know.
We've got him, yeah.
We've got him, yeah. It's quite spooky.
This illustrates one of the things that I never liked about them, and I don't like about them now. And it's this thing that when I was a child, it seemed like all fiction and all television programmes populated by people who talk like that.
Oh, of course, yes. Well, they do. They do talk like that, don't they?
Yes.
All of them. Yeah. No one has a regional accent, do they?
Apart from the one who's a bit rough.
Yeah, there's a weird... Yeah.
Yeah, that lad who's oh, right, you? Yeah.
Yeah. Or there's a character called Di, who we might come on to, played by Freddie Jones, who lives in a cave.
Yeah.
It's like regional accent. Put him in a cave.
Yeah, put him in a cave.
Yeah, put him in a cave.
Having met on the first one with a telescope, you don't really need a telescope because he's quite near to them.
It's quite near.
He's watching them.
In fact, if anything, the telescope's going to hinder.
Yeah.
They're hinder because you're too near. Yeah.
Everybody talks like that.
Yeah, they do. There is that. Everyone's very...
And that's what repelled me against all of these programmes.
Yeah.
Because they weren't relatable to me because they weren't...
Posh. Everyone's like posh, aren't they? And also, always pouring himself a whiskey. He's always pouring himself a scotch, isn't he, that fella?
Yeah.
Like Brake, Professor Dr. Brake.
And Hendrick.
Gareth Thomas. Gareth Thomas always doing it, isn't he?
Yeah.
You know, getting a whiskey. You know, you think, all right. And then they go to the pub, don't they? There's no one in the pub. It's with him in the pub having a whiskey. Got a problem. But I find it quite amusing because, as you said earlier, nowadays in a kids' TV programme, that would not be tolerated. No. It's a character who did that now would have a drink problem. They'd only do it that in a kids' TV programme if you had a drink problem. Whereas in Children of the Stones, he's having a whiskey all the time, isn't he? Have a stiff whiskey, you know.
Yeah, if it was now, somebody would look to the screen as if to say, oh, aye. Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Another whiskey. Dr. Brake. Another whiskey.
So they come into town, they settle down with Mrs. Crabtree and Hendrick, the May guy. They don't know he's the May guy, the druid.
He's just
the head honcho.
Yeah,
he introduced himself. Yeah. But they've also helpfully got this really rubbish picture, haven't they? That Matthew's picked up.
Yeah, Matthews, who's Brake's son, has picked up this picture of the stone circle and these Neolithic people dancing around it.
Some people are dancing, some people are running away.
Some people seem like they've been turned into stones. And then there's a man and a boy running away, isn't there?
Foreshadowing.
Yeah. But it's rubbish.
It reminds me, there's a Facebook, you're not on Facebook, are you?
No.
There's a Facebook group called Terrible Art in Charity Shops.
That's definitely fun, isn't it? Yeah.
So they have things like Pink Panther having a fag on the toilet.
But again, you see that you come back to the father-son relationship is so implausible, because if me and you had picked up a picture like that in a charity shop and said to our dad, "Can I buy this?" They'd have said, "Get out off, put it back. That's rubbish. What are you doing with that?" But he's gone, "Oh, buy it. It could be a prophecy." Yeah. Right. Okay.
And as they're running away on this picture, there's also a snake, isn't there? And the serpent road.
There's like a serpent, isn't there? That plays a part in it as well. Not quite sure how, but it does.
When Mrs. Crabtree sees it, she faints at the sight.
She does. Yeah.
Collapses. And then wakes up. They bring her around with some smelling salts. So make us tea, Mrs. Crabtree.
He does. He wants a cup of tea. She's fainted. And then he says, "Oh, you're feeling better now, Mrs. Crabtree. Go and make us one of the terrible omelettes."
More chocolate cake, please. And another feature of this, picture, is something in Latin, which Matthew is able to translate.
Yeah, because he's slightly precocious, isn't he? He's like a boy genius, isn't he?
Boy genius, a wannabe astrophysicist.
Yes, yeah.
He could, he's going to be the person his dad would have been if he hadn't hit the whiskey.
Yeah. The whiskey. What a terrible green coat.
And in Latin it says, "I deny the existence of that which exists."
Yeah.
So that profound statement is going to have resonance.
Well, is it? It's sort of like something a games master has made up on the spot, isn't it?
Yeah.
For the players to mull over between one session and another.
So they're way into this society, because it is a very close society, and as we mentioned, some people are the happy ones. And Margaret Smythe and her daughter Sandra, they're not affected. She runs like the local museum.
They have like a local museum about for the stones, obviously.
Yeah.
But again, no one ever visits it. I mean, they've got a museum like the pub. No one's ever in the pub apart from him knocking back the whiskey when he takes Sandra's mum on a date. And it's a bit of a romantic thing going on there. It's never quite developed.
Yeah. Because he's a widower, isn't he? So.
Yeah.
And they kind of connect, don't they?
Yeah. No one in the pub, no one in the museum.
Yeah. And the museums area, I've been in places like that.
Yeah.
Where everything's like labelled with typewritten.
Yeah, and there's like a little model of the stone circle, isn't there? As it would have been in Neolithic times and all that kind of thing. And there's a body of this character called the barber surgeon, isn't there?
Yes.
The skeleton, the barber surgeon. He's like found holding an amulet, isn't he? And he's crushed by one of the stones. And I think the suggestion later on is that the barber surgeon was kind of onto what was going on. The same thing was going on in the past.
Yeah.
The barber surgeon was onto it and was crushed under one of these stones.
Yeah.
And then there's this character called Di, isn't there, who lives in a cave. And there's a suggestion that they're not one and the same, but Di's mirroring his behaviour.
The myth is repeating
itself. Yes.
Yeah, that they're somehow locked within these stones.
Yeah.
Stories repeat themselves.
Yeah.
And
That's the thing that runs through it. History is kind of repeating itself. So the picture shows a ceremony that is kind of replicated later on, or there's a suggestion. At the end it's replicated, but there's a suggestion earlier on that it's been replicated. And of course, the man and the boy running away, the suggestion that it's him and his son Matthew and Brake that are running. So all the way through it, there's suggestions that history has been repeating itself in some kind of strange cycle.
the museum provides also some exposition in terms of the ley lines, because the ley lines become significant. That these are somehow some power cables that are
power cables, and the stone circle lies at the centre of them all. So the stone circles are kind of either some kind of power source or generator or something like that, isn't it?
And this realisation that there's 53 stones, there's 53 ley lines, and 53 people who populate the village. But it doesn't include Matthew and Adam. So it's supposed to be an amazing revelation, but they have made that bit up, haven't they? So it does.
They made it up. I mean, we sound like space it the last 10 minutes or so. We've taken the mickey out of it a bit, haven't we? And you can take the mickey out of it because of its time it was made. But it is strangely watchable, isn't it?
It's strangely watchable, and I think where it becomes really compelling, because there's the whole thing of like the kids are determining some of this, and that's what makes it interesting. Because through adult eyes watching it now, you kind of focused on the adult story. But really what it does, it's actually the children who are trying to break through it. The children who are actually seeing it for what it is and trying to push against it. And finding they feel close to die, don't they? And it seemed to give him the time of day, because he's the one who's warning them, look, once you're inside the store,
and he tries
never get out.
And he tries to contact them, doesn't he? He tries to get the message to them through the kids, doesn't he? So Di kind of contacts Matthew and contacts the kids. They're the people he thinks he can convince, because the adults aren't going to believe him. And
I think that's where it starts to become really convincing. So, like I said, we have been mocking it a bit, but at the moment where you realise that Hendrik is some kind of sinister figure, his house is like an old church, isn't it? That's outside of the ley lines. It's kind of the centre
it's
of
it's like a manor house near the church, isn't it? And the church, there's no vicar. They make this big thing that there's no vicar at the church. So the suggestion that it's kind of pagan or something odd's going on.
And they identify these and they watch these rituals where the happy people are in circles making the noises.
The weird noise,
yeah. And we've forgotten the most terrifying bit is where Adam touches the stone and he gets like the foreshadow of the people who are in the ritual circle.
Yeah.
And he is clearly what's revealed is that there's some connection with this supernova, this part of Ursa Major.
Yeah, that's the gist of it, isn't it? That there's this supernova black hole that is, been discovered, and it somehow links to the stone circle, doesn't it?
And Hendrik has an atomic clock.
Yeah.
This very advanced computer system. You know it's advanced because it's got those tapes that go backwards and forwards.
Tapes that go backwards and forwards. It's got flashing lights. It's very advanced.
And he's monitoring
the time
of when this aligns, because that's the moment when he can convert people.
Yeah. And there is a thing as well in it where going for dinner at his house is the point of conversion. They work out, people get invited for dinner and they go, and when they come back they're kind of saying happy day to everyone, aren't they? Yeah. Because there's a doctor, isn't there, and his son. There's a doctor and his son.
Yeah, underutilised doctor.
The underutilised doctor who says no one's ever ill.
Who's also got a dog tooth check jacket. Yeah. So it must be very clever.
Dog tooth check, very clever. That's what he's saying, isn't it? Yeah, those kind of people. But he goes with his son, doesn't he? And he comes back saying happy day. And then, of course, the big reveal is Sandra and her mum go, don't they?
Yeah.
They go, don't they? And I was watching thinking, why are you going?
Yeah.
You've worked out that going's a bad idea. What are you going for?
Yeah.
Oh, if the soul would go, well, it's funny that everyone who goes comes back is sort of brainwashed. Would you like to come for dinner? Yeah, okay then. Yeah. Why are you going? Anyway, they go and they get taken into this weird room, don't they? With stone chairs as a kind of slightly medieval or pagan.
Definitely a cult.
Yeah, like a cult. It is a bit Cthulhu, isn't it? At that point, you think.
Yeah.
Obviously, at the time, you didn't think Cthulhu, but now you think, oh yeah, Cthulhu cultist, this guy, isn't it? You know.
Yeah.
And there is the atomic clock. So at a certain point, the ceiling opens, doesn't it?
And Hendrik
he turns his back. Hendrik turns his back, and then there's this flash of light, and that flash of light sort of seems to convert them, Sandra and her mum, into these blissful, happy day, not zombies, but these kind of slightly docile people. And that's what happens, isn't it? Yeah. And then they go back, and of course Matthew and his dad go, oh no, they've been converted now.
Yeah.
And then they're trying to escape then, don't they?
Yeah. And the subtext is that this is a very highly conforming society. And that sense of a conspiracy. The conspiracy is that the population needs to be docile.
Yeah.
And that Hendrik is, because of his superior knowledge and occult, is putting them in that position. And they all seem completely benign, like we were saying, but that seems with.
And what it reminded me of, and this might be a bit I don't know whether this is a reasonable interpretation of it or not. What it reminded me of a bit, given the time it was made, was that thing in the 70s. There was a thing in the 70s where there were fears about things like communism, or the left taking over, or even the right taking over. So there was a fear, wasn't there, of, and it exists today, I suppose it's always existed, but I think in the 70s there's this thing of like political dogma taking over, whether it be left or right. I'm not saying it's about communism or about the fact.
I don't know
the idea that
I know there is that, or it's more about the the idea of the blissful pig.
Possibly, yeah.
Doesn't know it's going to be slaughtered.
Yeah.
So
but it's that idea, isn't it, that there's a society. You go to a place, and gradually everyone becomes almost like indoctrination, isn't it?
Yeah.
There is a sense of that, even though it's not indoctrination, it's sci-fi, and it's like, ooh, the supernovas wiped your mind and made you docile. But there is that sense throughout it of people being converted to some kind of weird belief, and when they say happy day, they've converted to it.
Yeah.
Which, when you think of the 70s, that was a thing, wasn't it?
I mean, it leans heavily into the Wicker Man.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
When they're doing the ritual, and there's like a hobby horse that snaps its, that the puppet snaps its jaws in the same way as it does in the Wicker
They
Man.
do the Morris dancing, don't they? That again is portrayed as a weird thing where there's a guy who's Morris dancing, and they say, what's he doing the dance for? He thought it was all nonsense the other week. He said it was a lot of old rubbish, and now he's a Morris man, isn't he, doing the dancing? Yeah, that kind of converted to the cult.
Yeah, the Morris dancers clearly extras who were in a different film to everybody else, weren't they?
Library footage.
Anyway, as you say, they start to manufacture their escape, because it is foreshadowed in the terrible art from the charity shop that they are going to escape.
Yeah.
Now, this is where it kind of comes off the rails a little bit, doesn't it?
A bit, yeah.
Don't quite understand how they manage it.
Well,
but
they try and escape, don't they? But they can't escape.
No,
Because they realise they can't escape.
because that's what Di said, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no escape from this place. You're trapped in it, really. So you try and drive out, but you're not going to escape. So then they do accept the invitation, don't they, to dinner at the Manor House, Or do they accept the invitation, or they just kind of end up there and kind of almost end up as prisoners, don't they? He traps them, doesn't he? Really.
Traps them in, and it feels like predestined, doesn't it? That they have to go there, so they end up around the table.
Yeah. So there's a bit of yeah. And I think they play dumb, don't they? They say, oh yeah, we'll have dinner, and they go to a room and they work out that he's got this atomic clock, don't they? And I think this. I know what you mean. What happens later is a bit bonkers, but I quite like this bit that they work out that they can alter his atomic clock and it'll go wrong because of the time. I bet that's quite clever. I quite like that bit. You know?
Good play character.
Good play character.
You'd let that go.
You definitely would, wouldn't you? You think, they can't beat him. They can't escape this place. They've not many options. And then the realisation, well, all we've got to do is make sure that he gets his timing wrong, because it's all built on timing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he gets his timing wrong, and of course it all goes pear-shaped, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That was quite clever. Admittedly, what happens at the end is a bit bonkers.
Yeah.
And I thought, what's going on here? Because he does the thing. Everyone kind of gathers, don't they?
Yeah.
And they sit at the dinner table, don't they? And the ceiling opens, and he turns his back, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Because he can't look at the supernova, can he? Because otherwise he'll end up like that, won't he? So he has a swiveled stone like pagan throne, but it's a swivel one, very 70s. Very 70s, isn't it? It's pagan, but it swivels. I'd be surprised if it didn't have like a cigarette lighter in the arm, something like that.
Yeah.
Very 70s. So he swivels round. Nothing happens. But you don't see it, does he?
No.
You don't see it because he's turned his back. He has to turn his back. He doesn't see it. And then when he turns around, they act like numb. They act like they've been converted, don't they?
Yeah.
Because they've not. And then they go outside, don't they? And they join the circle of people who are then turning into stones, aren't they?
Yeah.
But of course, it don't work because everyone needs to be converted. That's what it suggests, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And they're not. So once they join the circle, breaks it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then he turns into an old druid, doesn't he? And screams. And presumably dies, doesn't he?
Screams, but comes back at the end, because once they leave, there's a sense that actually it restarts again, because there's a new Lord of the Manor who's the same person.
It's the same person. It's just history's just going to repeat itself.
I
suppose it's kind of this attempt to be a disconcerting ending, because what it tries to suggest is that this will repeat until it is successful.
Yes.
So he turns up and he's been shown around the house, and he clearly Kendrick has no memory, does he?
No, because he's a different character, isn't he? called Jerome or something.
Yeah. But it's the same actor, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's like and Di's still alive, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's not dead anymore, and he's because they escaped.
The barber surgeon, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. Because they escape, don't they, to his cave?
Yeah.
When they run away at the end, they escape to his cave. And then when they wake up in the morning, he's there and he's alive. He doesn't know who they are. He's quite annoyed with them, kicks him out of his cave, and they go back to the village. And in the village, the people in the village they do remember them, don't they? But they don't remember the events.
No.
And they seem quite normal. And then they just leave then, don't they? At the end of it is they leave, but
will they come back? Because
that's the suggestion, isn't it? That they'll come back. Yeah. It did its job, and it's kind of well crafted despite some of the clunky bits. Well crafted TV for the 70s, you know.
Shall we have another pint now?
Yeah, I think so. I'll eat one after that.
I'll get me coat.
Well, we have got our coat. We actually left the pub, and this is a couple of weeks later.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting our coats and having a
I've
brew.
been caught on forever. I'll never feel the benefit when I leave.
We've been come back to the kitchen, haven't we? We're just having a brew and a break because I've come back from my holiday in that there fancy London. Feeling a bit skinter.
Feeling a bit skin. £9 a pint.
I mean, I'm getting used to that in Manchester, £9 a pint.
Where are you going? £9 a pint?
No,
it's not £9 a pint.
Yeah, it used to be the case, isn't it, where you could go to Manchester and we'd be paying £3 or £4 a pint.
Yeah.
Now it's about £7.50. And
why?
It is.
You go and drinking with someone else.
Not
drinking.
I went.
Five. Some places it is, but I'd say places we go £5.50.
Oh no, I went with a couple. I have got other friends, and I bought a round. And it came to there was 3 of us. Came to £21.
Right.
And I said, "Are you sure?"
Yeah. Check. You sure?
So,
in the old days of money, that would be a situation where you'd have a £20 note in your hand and they'd say £21 and you'd look at your £20 note and think, what?
And in London, though, I went to see Oppenheimer at the IMAX. Not the big fancy IMAX at the BFI, but it was near Swiss Cottage because that's where we were staying. And I didn't check the prices. I just had it worked out in my head how much it would be. 2 tickets, £50. £50.
That's cost you a bomb, hasn't it?
Hey!
We sound like proper Northerners, don't we? Good grief, what?
Anyway, this is the closing time chatter bit. What have you got as your closing time chatter for the podcast?
My closing time chatter, the thing that has occupied my mind in the last few weeks, is restarting our Pirates of Drinax campaign. Mid-September, we're due to restart it, aren't we? It's always interesting, isn't it, when you do these long campaigns and you have a break. We have a bit of a summer break, don't we?
Yeah.
Kind of kick-starting it is always quite a difficult thing to do. Not that I don't want to do it, but getting your brain back in campaign mode.
Yeah.
Because it's a great campaign, and I'm sure at some point we'll talk about it in more depth on the podcast. But it is very sandboxy. You lot, as the crew, as the pirates, and you are supposed to do this, very specific about it, very clear about it. You do your own thing, don't you? So as we play it, the story kind of develops, doesn't it, in a very open way. But at the same time, from a games master's perspective, I need to have some idea where it's going and what things might happen irrespective of what you do as players. So it's that odd thing of getting my head back into it, planning a bit, but in the full knowledge that I can't plan too much because you will immediately do something that I'm not expecting.
The other thing that'll make it hard for you is the end of season 1, if we were going to call it that.
Yeah.
It did have a sense of closure, didn't it? Because we returned to the point where we started, really.
Yeah.
And like Charles Dickens, we ended with a marriage, didn't we? I married a robot.
You're going to marry a robot. That's rude, isn't it? She's an android, isn't she? She's a synthetic human.
A synthetic human.
Not a robot. That's like you married R2-D2. You married a bucket on wheels.
Somehow it makes it sound less creepy if...
It's creepy to say you've married it's creepy to say you married a synthetic human, but not creepy to say you married R2-D2.
Somehow, in my mind, that's
in your head,
I've reconciled it.
It's acceptable to marry R2-D2.
Because it's actually a stolen pleasure bot, wasn't it?
Well, it wasn't. Well, let's be clear about this. I think you turned her into a pleasure bot. And we're honest. She was. I think one of the ships that you pirated was a fashion merchant. Because what you do is it's got lots of tables, hasn't it, for the kind of ships you encounter and what kind of cargo they've got. So we do it all randomly, which is quite good fun because it does generate stories in itself, doesn't it? Some of the cargo that you've got has been a bit bonkers at times, and he was a fashion designer, wasn't he?
Yeah.
She was one of the synthetic robotic mannequins, wasn't she, for his fashion show? Yeah. And you stole that, and I think shall we say you upgraded her?
We upgraded
her, didn't you?
We upgraded her because
You said we. Your character upgraded her. None of the others are really on board with it, are they?
They're not. And it's because my character is the only character who went to university. And he didn't feel like he was being mentally stimulated sufficiently over those long haul jumps.
That's right. Yeah.
So he had intelligence upgraded so he could have an equal conversation.
That's right. So she's intellectual equal. That's correct. Yeah, that's what you did. Yeah. But all that it's quite funny because all that it's not in the campaign, is it?
No.
It's just completely.
But there was also a planet, wasn't there? This tech world where it was possible for.
Yeah, you went to tech world where there's lots of scientists and they were able to kind of enhance her and make her more human than human.
More human than human.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Because she qualified then as a sentient.
Well, you went to another planet, didn't you? Where robots could claim kind of equal human rights. And she sat the test, didn't she? They had a test and she sat the test and passed the test because she'd been enhanced.
The Turing test.
Exactly. Yeah, and she's on that planet, at least she has equal rights. Not everywhere else. But.
And that's where we got married. So that's where we had this sense of closure.
Yeah.
And that is hard to think, where do you go from there, really?
Well, you're off to explore a mystery planet, aren't you? There's a new planet you've discovered, and you're off. That's where it will start. So there was a kind of cliffhanger where you hit jump space to go into an empty parsec, didn't you? Where there apparently is nothing, but you found a map suggests there is something there.
But the way things are going, we might turn around and say, "Shall we bother now?" We won't bother. Shall we go back? And
it's too late. I think that's the one thing I'm banking on. The one thing I'm banking is you've gone into jump space. You are going to materialise in that space. But beyond that, anything could happen.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of it. As a campaign, it is fantastic in that you can do that. And there's a lot of stuff in the campaign to support a GM so that you can do that kind of thing. But it is got a kind of odd thing to get your head back into that space of thinking, I'm going to be running this for another 6 or 7 months now, and I need to have a skeleton plan in my head of what might happen at either end. Because there are some things that happen in it.
Yeah.
There are some scenarios in it. But equally, balance that against the fact that you're going to do whatever you want, aren't you?
Yeah.
Because there are things last time that I thought you would do. I won't tell you what, but I thought you would do. But you've decided not to do them.
Yeah. On the other side of the coin, so you've got probably the most... Sandbox is the term that gets used. We've got a lot of agency within that map to explore where we need to explore and to create our own destinies, if you like.
Yeah, and create like alliances. You've made alliances with planets and all that kind of thing, yeah.
And the other end of that is the Conan campaign that I'm running for us once a month.
Yeah.
And I think I've said before that those monthly campaign slots, they're hard to start each time. And this scenario, so it's the Shadow of the Sorcerer, so it's one of Modiphius's pre-printed. Now, I bought it last April, and they're running these things. I started at the beginning of this year, and when I read it, it's quite a distance between when I read it and when I ran it, and so each time I keep coming up to the chapter and seeing what's coming next, and I must admit that I've been wincing a little bit over the last couple of things because, I mean, I've used this phrase before, but I wouldn't say it was a railroad, but a Reaver have applied for a franchise.
Conan and the British Rail franchise.
Because there's this middle section, it was all going well, weren't it? But then there's this middle section where things have to happen.
Things have to happen, and you at the end of one of those sessions, you openly apologised to all those players and said, I'm really sorry about that. That has to happen. And that's why it happened. And there was nothing you could do about it. Because there was a point, I think, during that session where we started to do things. We're fighting a monster, weren't we? We started to do things and thought, oh, come on, I'm not going to be able to, can't be this thing. What's going on here? You know, but of course afterwards you said, like, that all has to happen.
And it does have some narrative, it has some mechanical bits to do those things, like the doom spends.
Yeah.
But because of the way that you were playing it, I had to spend a lot of doom to activate all the things that the monster needed to happen. And it did feel like it. And there's a couple. It felt a bit ridiculous as though you were spectators at your own fight, really. Yeah. But like I say, it's got to have that. It's got to have that for that transition period. It's got to have it to get you to the next spot. Yeah. But if I'd ever seen it ahead of time, I think I would have manipulated it a bit. But I've done that thing where I'm just laying the tracks. Literally laying the tracks down for us. A chapter at a time. And when I reached that bit, I thought, I gave you all an additional permanent fortune point. And in the text boxes as well, in the campaign, it makes these apologies to say, well, this is what Conan's like, Conan's story. But I don't think in this day and age you can get away with imposing things.
Also, I mean, stories are railroaded. Because they're stories, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, they're railroaded because they're written by someone. They're not a role-playing adventure. That's there's the heart of the problem, isn't it? Really, you can't railroad players and then say, "Oh yeah, but the stories are like this, aren't they?" What do you mean the stories are like this? Because they're stories. They're flipping stories where you're reading a story. I mean, it doesn't give you any choice. It's a story.
And the other thing that it's got, and again, when I did the initial read-through, I didn't realise how important it was to it, is bloody dream sequences.
Yeah, there is a lot of dream sequences.
And I don't like dream sequences.
No. You don't like them in films, you don't like them in games, you don't like them. And I must admit, I agree. Dream sequences are always a bit odd. Always a bit odd as well from the player's perspective, because you start thinking, is it a dream? Can I die in the dream? Or is it just a dream?
Yeah.
What should I do? Should I do something and risk death as a player? But it doesn't matter because it's a dream. Or, even though it's a dream, will I die in the real world? I don't know. I don't know quite what to do as a player. It's odd. It's always an odd feeling, I think, a dream from a player's perspective as well.
And it has the combined thing of being really heavy-handed in saying this is what this dream's about, by also being very oblique about this is what this dream's about. So it's the worst of both worlds.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very obvious and very bleak at exactly the same time.
But the good news is that you're getting to the nameless island and you've got a bit more agency and a bit more fun. It's a good system and it's fun playing Conan, isn't it?
It's fun playing Conan. The 2D20 Conan is good because it does generate the same kind of sense of Conan, the fights and the things you can do. You do feel like something from the stories, definitely.
Decapitating somebody with manacles, for example.
Yeah, we did, didn't we? Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, that's good. Anyway, that's the end of another podcast. I think we can head out now.
Okay, I'll try and feel the benefit. I've had this caught for a long time.
There isn't another bit. Thanks again to Keeve for spending the time with us at the book club, and to Jonathan Cockram who set it all up for us. You're all very welcome to attend the book club. You'll find the details on thegrognardfiles.com. We have more guests coming soon, including Jeff Richards from KRCM, Gaz Bowerbank from What Would the Smart Party Do, and John Four, the creator of the 5-Room Dungeon. Also check out the site to find out more about the online convention, the Owl, Bear and the Wizard staff, and the forthcoming plans for Grogmeet, our annual convention. The best way to keep track of all these things is to join the GrogPod Discord. Let me know if you want an invite. Lots of the Grog Squad have moved over from Twitter, which is losing its X appeal, to Blue Sky, and it's all very convivial at the moment. There is some debate over whether people self-identify as the Grog Squad or not. If you listen to the podcast, you're part of the Grog Squad. Or you're not, you decide. There's no badge. In fact, there's very little to it other than something that I say here. It's not like a club, like the Dennis the Menace fan club in the Beano. You don't have to join. In fact, I refused to join the Dennis the Menace fan club. It wasn't for me, and Nasha looked like it was giving me the side eye. If you want to show your appreciation, then we would be grateful for your support on Patreon. Thanks to everyone that does or has done in the past. It's always very encouraging as well to get reviews and to know that people are passing it on to someone they know who may enjoy listening to this rubbish. I'm looking forward to the next episode. I think you'll find it a bit special. Until then, adios amigos.